Okay. Hello and welcome to our December 4th, 2025 Jupyter community call. I am Lahari Chowdhury and I'll be your host today. And this is my first time hosting the community call. So if I make any mistakes, just pardon me. So this is the place for all the contributors of Jupyter to connect with each other and the community about any exciting work happening in the Jupyter community. So we want all newcomers to feel welcome and as well as welcome everyone. A special highlight and welcome to all the first time participants as well. We want all new welcomers to feel welcome, and we want you to join in on the discussions and also introduce yourselves or add items to the agenda on the HackMD. So please also keep in mind that this call will be recorded and posted to the YouTube for the community to view later on. So this call is part of the Jupyter community, and we follow the Jupyter code of conduct. So which you can read about in the link in the chat if you want to go through it. And also, if you have any topic that you'd like to discuss, please add it to the agenda. You should have all the links available in the chat as well. So starting off, we have four items on agenda right now. We have Kirsty, who is from Berkeley Institute of Data Science, who we all are very familiar. Um, could we actually bump down, please? Kirsty, I did not understand what that means. You have to explain to me. Okay, got it. Okay, we'll start with Thomas. Would you like to introduce yourself and talk about your topic?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Thomas Dukevich, and I work at the Space Telescope Science Institute, and specifically, I work in our archive. So it's our job to make sure that everybody can get access to the data from the Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, and there's like 24 others in there. And we use Jupyter notebooks all the time. We have a collection of 70 plus notebooks that we've turned into tutorials for how to get data out of the archive, how to make cool visualizations of all of the data that we have, right? But a big challenge for us is that we have a level of obligation to make our data accessible to everyone, and that includes blind and visually impaired users. And we've found that as we rely on Jupyter more and more for that, we're making it a little bit harder for those people to get access to our tutorials. And so what I wanted to show today is just a tool that we came across to make the plotting aspect a little bit easier. Because for us, that's the big challenge, right? Is 70 notebooks and well over half of them, the conclusion is, and here's a graph of the data, right? So even assuming that somebody could fully operate Jupyter with a screen reader and not have any issues, that doesn't change the fact that what we're doing, what the goal of the tutorial is make a plot or make an image. Um, anyway, so the tool I wanted to show is called Mater. We found it incredibly useful, and I think I should just let it speak for itself and pull up the notebook. Um, let me get a window going here, and I am going to share sound because it sonifies the data, so you will hopefully hear that coming through. So should be visible now. What I'm showing is one of our existing notebook tutorials about looking at extinction curves in a particular ultraviolet observation. So there's a lot of equations here, and we're explaining how to query the archive. This isn't really relevant, right? But the thing that's super cool is that for a complicated plot like this, where we're looking at two separate stars, which are each have long wavelength LW and then short wavelength SW data. This is a really challenging plot to sonify, and all we had to do to get this working was just add a mater.show. And then once you get into this actual mater context, you can use the arrow keys to move around, and hopefully those sounds are coming through. So it changes the pitch depending on what the data is showing. And you can do some cool things like see if I remember the keyboard shortcut. Have it go through all the data at once, so you're going to get a lot of sound all at once, or maybe not. Oh, there we go. Right, so you can kind of hear it changing as it goes down, and then it's pretty easy to toggle between. So we're looking at the dusty example here, and then if I use the down arrow key, you get the no dust example. It's great, right? You can change the text mode to be verbose and show everything. You can make it terse, so it's a little easier to read. It has compatibility with Braille displays, so it will actually create the shape for people who have refreshable Braille. You can decide to turn the sound off if that's, let's see, yeah, if the sound is irritating and you just want to have the plot locations announced. And then there's even, if I remember the shortcut, yeah, integration with AI stuff. I think that could be useful. I have mixed feelings personally, but I think it's a cool tool to make available in this particular case, right? To be able to get a description, especially if you're looking at data that's like an image as opposed to a plot like this. So I don't want to take up too much time with the demo, and I'm not the developer, so I don't have too much more to say, but we were just really, really impressed by the way this just worked seamlessly with our existing tutorial, and we're hoping that other people in the community might find it useful as well.
This is great. Thank you for sharing with all of us, Thomas.
Yeah, no problem.
And like I said, we just have four people on agenda. So if you have anything to talk, you're free to talk. You have more time.
Oh, sure. I think there was maybe one comment in the chat. I have not tried out chart to music. That sounds interesting. I guess I don't know. How did that does that work similarly to like Mater for doing this kind of stuff or?
Yeah, it was really striking how similar it was when you were demoing it. Like it's the same demo. But were you using Matplotlib there or
Yeah, so it's compatible with Matplotlib and Seaborn, and almost all of our examples use Matplotlib, which is why Mater kind of is perfect.
yeah, that's interesting because Matplotlib is usually generating like images, right? Am I wrong? Instead
Right.
of like interactive, because that was what was like kind of helpful for the Plotly example was that it was like already interactive in the browser, so it was a little easier to make it interactive. But anyway, that is just really similar. I was wondering if there were like pros or cons, but totally fine.
Yeah, no, I think the developer was talking about it yesterday, the magic that goes on behind the scenes to secretly make this into an iframe and then constantly be redrawing things in the graph. But yeah, that's another good tool to mention. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay. Um, we'll move forward. The next person on the agenda is Abdurrahman Reedy. I hope I did not mess up your name, who is from Central Bank and want to talk about his thing. So
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for accepting me. It's my first time here, and I come from France. I work for Banque de France. It's the central bank of France. So I work as a technical leader in data. So today I want to present Web HDFS Magic, which is a small package I created to make HDFS easier for data professionals. So I published it on Pipe yesterday. The idea comes from my training sessions on Spark Magic when I trained data scientists to use Spark Magic. I always show how simple and powerful magic command could be. So at some point, I realized that the same approach could help with the HDFS. And because of Spark Magic uses a config file, a config.json file, I wanted WebHDFS Magic to be complementary, so a user can reuse the same configuration file and WebHDFS Magic will load it completely. The project also come from a real problem we see in many companies with on-premise infrastructures. So users do not have direct access to the edge node for security reasons. So they cannot run HDFS commands in a terminal. So they work from remote labs like Jupyter Hub or a laptop. So on Jupyter environments, and the basic HDFS actions become difficult, and because they must write a long PyWeb HDFS client code, 20 lines to do some simple tasks. So in my work at the central bank, I saw this every day, and the analysts and the economists had to write this 10 or 20 lines to code just to check a directory or just to download a file. So they were spending more time on the client setup than on their real analysis. So I created this package to bring that simple and to use the magic command of IPython to improve HDFS commands. So the goal is very simple. Let users run short, clear command like HDFS list, HDFS get or put. So no client initialization, no long parameters, and because it uses Nox gateway, it's naturally in remote environments where SSH access is not allowed. So since we introduced the WebHDFS Magic package in our Jupyter Hub platform, the impact has been immediate. So users who struggled with HDFS basic commands now upload file, organize directories, can download data in few seconds. And the current version include some of must used HDFS commands like make dir, put, get, changing owner, changing permissions, and we are also working on new features like stat, find, progress bars, some extensions using Jupyter and the parallel upload. So I can do some demonstration for people who want. I can share my screen if you want. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so after installing this WebHDFS Magic package, user have to configure once his config.json file, and it can inherit this file from Spark Magic configuration. So loading extension, it's already loaded, so we can see help like Spark Magic commands here. So we have the most used command here. We have here we can list the, sorry, I have a problem. It's the demonstration problem. But we can list the, yeah, this is another example, but we can list directories directly from HDFS. We can read files. We can show the content of files. We can move files from HDFS to the Jupyter Lab server, and we can move files from the Jupyter Lab to the HDFS file system, and users can simply use this with Spark Magic, so to create some notebooks and to interact with their data. So here is, I think I have a problem with my demonstration server, but we have now only one line command instead of 20 lines or 30 lines of PyWebHDFS client lines. So it make easy to use it with Spark Magic and to interact with closed Hadoop systems. So we are in the big data field, and we talk about Spark and HDFS. So don't hesitate to take a look on the package, to use it, and if you have any questions, I am here. I think, Jim, you have a question? Or no?
No, I was just applauding.
No. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome to the first timers list, Abdur Rahman, because we are all first timers here, I guess. I mean, you and me, and it was really nice. If anybody has any questions, please do reach out to him after this call because we do have one more person on the list right now. So I have one more thing to say before we move on to the next person. Please make sure that you add your name to the welcome um, to the attendee list. The link is in the chat. And before me, I've been just looking at the attendee list and not actually saying the agenda items, because of which I did not announce the titles before. So we'll announce the titles now. So the next person on the agenda is Jim White, and he's going to talk about the local first AI demo of in-browser LLMs in Jupyter Light notebooks. Floor is yours, Jim.
Thank you, thank you. And so I just wanted to also say, like I said earlier, I was at JupyterCon, and that was really fabulous. And that's really these are ideas that I've been working on literally for a ridiculously long time, but is really timely and got me fired up. I think Jeremy is on this call, and he provided a lot of help. And then I got some more help with somebody I met afterwards. And now the question is, how do I share a document? What happens? Oh my gosh. Of course, that's not working. How about if I do that over here? Always the most technically difficult part of the entire thing. Okay, let's use this one. It seems to be more ready to go. So this is wiki3.ai, and I'm going to skip over a lot of it, but um, it's one of the lines I have for it. It's the ambition is to be like Wikipedia, but Web3 and buy-in-for AI. But we're not getting into that today. This is just proof of concept work of local first AI, and um, the I'm just going to skip over a lot of preliminaries and just go into what is most current and I think most interesting at this part. And so this is the wiki part. These are statically rendered HTML pages from Jupyter notebooks. And this, I think, I was just looking at this yesterday. I think this is going to become Prov Book 2 in short order because obviously it needs a lot more cool features. But we'll skip over this part and head the edit buttons go into Jupyter Light Notebook mode. The lab buttons go into Jupyter Light lab mode. And let's start with this one. And so there's some of this explanation of what's going on here. And I wonder if I can how can I make this go away? Okay, well, I still can't see on my screen. Maybe this. All right. Um, so um, this notebook's been saved, so it already has the kernel here, but so this is Jupyter plus these two kernels that we've added. This one is WebLLM Chat, and the other one we'll see in a moment is uh, the built-in chat. And like I say, I was kind of having a hard time. The coding agents were not able to conquer these integration issues with JavaScript and browsers and stuff, and that's not my bailiwick, so I didn't even know how to guide them, but I got help from Alexander, and he was able to get this thing working. And what this kernel does is it wraps the WebLLM TypeScript library, which serves LLMs from these MLC LLM models on Hugging Face, and uses this particular version, I think, requires WebGPU. I don't think it has a fallback to non-GPU, but if you have WebGPU, and so this is a MacBook, like 2023 MacBook with 24 gigs, and so it can run quite a few different models. The source for this stuff is this is actually the wrong link. um, oh, no, check out this. Yeah, that's what we're going to look at next. Um, and this is, again, very rough, just a proof of concept. It doesn't have progress and errors and help or anything like this. But it does have a, well, I could start from a new cell, but let's just do this way so I know where I'm going. So the help works as you expect. Um, the default model is one of the smallest ones, which are also the most entertaining. This doesn't mention it yet, but there is a model selector here, which you have to, if you're going to use it, you have to choose before you start the notebook, because once the kernel state is running, right, we don't want to be changing the model. And I'll stick with the small model for now. And so again, this is just basically your input is just sent to the LLM, and whatever the LLM spits back, that's what you get back. And um, so the uh, and these small models are highly entertaining. But if you want to get more serious, you can load a bigger model. And again, so this one is, I think, it's at least half a gig to download. I think it's 4-bit 1 billion. So it will not happen instantaneously. And again, there's no feedback on downloading and stuff like this. So if you want to see what's going on, you can look in the well, actually, let's go ahead and do that. I'm not even sure this model is loaded. We'll find out here. I think we're going to find out that, yeah, it's not loaded. I may have been too ambitious. 20, 30. Okay, well, maybe we're okay. But it looks like we're going to get there. And now it's loading the model. It's download from the cache, and boom, all right. So there we go. At the moment, this is all it does. It just does chat. Um, and it actually is this current state of it. It doesn't even have a conversation history. Um, uh, so if I say, what about with bricks? It's not going to know. Yeah, so it doesn't know that. So this is just each query is being run without any other context. But we can go take a look over here as it suggests. And so this uses the relatively recent, it's still an experimental feature of Chrome, for which also Edge, Chrome and Edge, supposedly. I've never tried it on Edge. I'd love to hear if anybody gives this a whirl on Edge. Let me know if it works. Um, but it's behind some experiment flags that you need to turn on in order to enable. So of course, obviously it's already enabled for me. And this is at the moment, the only one that's being used is this prompt API, but they have other features, including multimodal with Gemini, and then other application specific features like writing and summarizing and rephrasing, this kind of stuff. So we'll get to those things someday. Let me touch my menu, please, Mr. Zoom. Don't need to. And the and of course you need to I think you need to restart after doing it. And so this is fairly chunky. It's a couple gigabytes, but it's a lot more. I suspect for a lot of cases, it's more practical because the browser is able to do a smarter job in terms of managing the GPU and the memory. Because like in the web GPU, almost for sure it's already in the other notebook, it's undoubtedly already unloaded my model from the GPU to save memory and stuff like this. So, but here the browser is able to do a more performant job in terms of managing your memory and things like this. But let's go for lab this time. They work the same. And here there's no model picker or anything because all the settings are already fixed. It's just whatever your browser has, if it's supported. And again, if it's not working, actually it will show you a little error message. Oh, this doesn't work. And well, let's just do a new. In fact, let's just do a new notebook. So we do a notebook, built-in chat, and we can say hello. How are you doing? And yeah. Uh, do and so that's my demo. Like I say, wiki3.ai. Things you just saw here were built-in chat notebook and the web LLM kernel notebook. That's it.
Thank you for sharing this with Jim.
How do I get back to? So, yeah, I'm trying.
Okay, so let's move on to the next topic on agenda. We have Kirsty and Simon talking about Jupyter Hub Hub Dash. Well, I think bump down means probably you want it to be second on the list.
No, this is perfect. I wanted to be further down on the list. So good morning from Berkeley, California. Usually I'm pretty good at getting out of bed, but it's cold now. And so I was terrible at getting out of bed. I apologize for not being ready. I do, in fact, have my Christmas pajamas on underneath my super cool Santa Cruz hoodie. So I'm really delighted. So I'm Kirsty. I'm the executive director for the Berkeley Institute for Data Science, and I am a maintainer for the Jupyter Hub community. And we have been doing some work with wonderful consultants at Organizational Mycology on a diversity, equity, and inclusion grant from Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, thinking about what is needed to ensure that Jupyter Hub is an inclusive community. And very importantly, the reason that we want it to be an inclusive community is so that it is a sustainable, thriving, creative community, so that we are not sort of living in a world where there are a very small number of expert maintainers who have to do all of the work. So we're really thinking about this as a very important sort of pipeline sort of activity to ensure that we have a healthy contributor base. We're serving our users, we have a healthy contributor base, and some of those contributors start to feel a little bit of the pull to be maintainers. So what we identified, there's a few different initiatives that we're doing, but specifically on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, we ran our first Hub Dash. And this name comes inspired by the Turing Way, which is a Jupyter book. It's a project that I founded 5 years ago. And we do book dash events where we get people together. They're fully remote. We have different collaboration sessions through the day so that people can join dependent on their time zones and their schedule. And it's some sort of remote but synchronous time to block your calendar and just kind of like do some of those tasks that you have been meaning to, but maybe are hard to kind of bubble up to the top of your to-do list when everything is asynchronous and you have the rest of life pulling at your attention. We also know that the task of being a maintainer is quite a sort of, it's a very, very invisible task. And there are skills that are difficult to train and difficult to articulate. And so what we also wanted to do with the Hub Dash was surface some of those skills, surface some of the maintainer intuition that maintainers develop over time to allow more contributors to see what that looks like. So for the Hub Dash, we had 3 time zones, 3 collaboration sessions, one that was particularly tuned for afternoon in Europe, one that was evening in Europe, morning on the Pacific, so lunchtime on the East Coast of the US. And that was our overlap time zone. So that was our sort of synchronous 3 hours where we were all in the same Zoom room together. And then we had an afternoon in the Pacific, 3 hours as well. So 3 sets of 3 hours. And the expectation was that most people attended, well, some people attended 1 of those 3-hour sessions. Some people attended 2, with the goal having as many people overlapping as possible. So I've put in the HackMD down, starting on line 60, a few links. One of the things that we were most proud of is there's a long time power user, Shane, but who sort of had opened a pull request about a year ago. Simon, who's on the call, who's a maintainer for Jupyter Hub, had reviewed it, but then life happened. And so Shane didn't continue to work on that pull request until a few weeks ago. Simon reviewed it again. And it was sort of one of these pull requests that he was like, what if we just got this over the line? And so literally on our first day, he was in a breakout room with Simon and Min, 2 of the maintainers, and they were synchronously reviewing and talking it through. That particular pull request is quite a fun one because it adds that, I'm going to read the title, adds slow spawn message progress for slow spawns. So for some people, when you're building up a Jupyter Hub, it might take a long time. And so a lot of times users, and by users in this case, I mean the people deploying the Jupyter Hub, will be like, it's broken. And what we wanted to do is add in a little message that said, nope, it's not broken. Just be patient. Everything's okay. Hold on in there. So what Shane said, which was an absolute perfect a perfect outcome for us with the design of the event, is that he learned so much by having that conversation with Simon and Min. So it's wonderful to have asynchronous review. We're not trying to sort of get away from asynchronous review being the main thing that we do through the year, but it's very enlightening to be in the same Zoom room, having that conversation, understanding what the questions, where the questions are and what's motivating them. We did that exercise because Shane came along and brought that pull request and we did the discussion. We then also planned a discussion between maintainers. So Simon brought a pull request that Hanyeri, another maintainer, had opened, and it was a little bit of a thorny one. And so we did a sort of mob review. And that, again, we got feedback from our attendees that was a really helpful exercise to witness the types of questions or the types of thinking that maintainers have when they're reviewing a pull request. The European team have some overlap. Jim Madge is also a contributor to JupyterBook. And so the European team, we're looking at migrating our documentation to Mist. There are some features that are not available in Mist. And so one of the other things that we did, which I haven't put in the HackMD, is add some comments and open a couple of issues, or sort of reinforce some issues in the JupyterBook and Mist GitHub repositories to make sure that that team know the importance of some of the features. I think particularly the automatic API documentation is the piece that's currently missing in Mist, but team are working on it. Oh, here's my daughter Mackenzie. I'm very nearly done. And so the very last thing that I wanted to put on here is, you want some hoops? You can have some hoops in just a second when I finish talking. So the last thing that I wanted to say is that we had done some work on understanding what Jupyter Hub's mission and vision, what the purpose of Jupyter Hub is, why does it exist? And so we also had a really interesting synchronous session where that with in one of those overlapping time zones, where we really dug into why do we work on Jupyter Hub? And that was a fantastic discussion. And there's a few notes in an issue that I've linked, but also the reason that we did that is not just to be clear about why we do the work, but actually to help us prioritize. So one of the biggest challenges that the maintainers have been noticing is that there's infinite work to do, and they do not have infinite time, and particularly it's often hard to find big chunks of time. And so what happens emergently is the littlest or the easiest or the noisiest, squeakiest, the people who complain the most, those PRs get acted on, but the longer term sort of thornier or sometimes even the most polite contributors don't get that attention. And so what we were doing is looking at making sure that our mission and vision allows us to prioritize our task list in a principled way. Okay, sorry, that was a lot of talking. Huge thank you to Simon and April are on the call. Mackenzie is very tall. And they were there. There's a bunch of other people. Ariel Bennett was our person who really ran the whole thing, who coordinated everything. So in absentia, a huge thank you to Ariel. She was spectacular.
Thank you, Kirsty. That was amazing. I think we definitely can use a lot of this and implement across sub projects too. So, yeah, we should talk about it. Next up in line, we have Jake Diamond, who wants to talk about the Jupyter User Stories channel. Floor is yours.
Hey, thanks. Hi everyone. I'm Jake. I'm from Jake John Ravitch. I'm from the Jupyter Media Strategy Committee, which we're or working group technically. We're a little bit siloed to the side sometimes, but I think one way to think of us is sort of like the marketing arm of Jupyter. So we work with the Jupyter media channels and help tell the story of Jupyter out in the public. We really believe that marketing or community storytelling is going to be a really big emphasis for Jupyter over the next year. And one of the things we want to do is start a new channel in Zulip to share those stories. So a place where people can share screenshots of something cool they're doing in Jupyter, or an interesting idea they have about a piece of content that the Jupyter community could make to put out, or a story about someone who is new to Jupyter and how they got started, or a cool use case they saw in their work. Trying to use Zulip to gather more of those stories and share them. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of announce that here. We'll probably put it live in the next few days in Zulip, and would encourage everyone to share interesting things about Jupyter that they think could be publicized and shared internally within the community, but also to people outside the community to help convince them to join the community. Cool. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, you can always reach me on Zulip. I'm in there at Jake Ravitch. And then or any just ideas about marketing generally, we can use that channel for that too. But cool. Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Hey, Anna.
Yeah, Jake, so people would post their stories in that channel, and you would envision promoting that story or sharing that story in Jupyter media channels, or can you share a little bit more about what people can expect if they share their stories there, and how or what they should share?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if you shared material, maybe some screenshots of something cool you're doing in Jupyter, probably someone from the Jupyter Media Group would reach out to you or send you a DM first and say, hey, can we put this on Hachyderm? Can we put this on our LinkedIn as an interesting story? So there to be a level of approval with all Jupyter Media content, which is part of what the JMS does, that we would go through with this as well. But hoping to make this as easily accessible for community members and also as grassroots as possible for us to get that content from people. I think the content that does the best is things that seem authentic and not produced by a media committee sometimes, but from real people in the community who are doing interesting things, which is happening all the time. I see it all the time in Zulip, but it would be cool to try and get it into one place. Yeah. Cool. I think there were a few other questions in the chat. I just saw them coming. So someone said Zulip versus HackMD. Yeah, I think Zulip is probably a good place for this. Yeah, I agree, Rosie, what you said, for sure. Yeah, Discourse is good too. I think, yeah, this idea it would be good to have maybe a resource channel for that there as well. We don't have a Zulip we don't have a Zulip link yet. I just have to work with the team we're gonna like pick a name for it and everything, but we'll have the channel live in the next few days, and then I'll make an announcement in one of the main channels and say, hey, join this channel if you're interested in contributing here. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, I think having a HackMD notes could be good too for archiving. Great. Will the announcement be announcement? Yeah, I'll probably put it in the announcements channel. I'll try at least to announce the new channel or the new thread to talk about these things. I'll put in the announcements channel and the other channels that I think will get people's eyes on it initially.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for joining. It was really great listening to all your stories, and thank you for letting me host this community call. Moving forward, maybe you'll see me often. And also, if you have any feedback on the community call, please direct it to the Discourse channel. And we'd also like to hear what you think about the call or how to improve our future meetings. And we're also looking for new hosts to host the community call, and we would love to do it monthly rather than doing it quarterly. So if anybody is interested, please reach out to me or Rocio on the call. We'll guide you how to do it. And yeah, we all can do it for the first time. So let us know if you're interested in doing that. And also, I would suggest you to check out the Jupyter community calendar to see what other types of meetings are happening in between. And yeah, let us know. You will also have access to the next meeting, HackMD. If you have any items that you want to add to the agenda, you're free to do so. If not, you can do it going along. And apart from that, we'll stop the recording right now. But if you have anything to say off the record, you can say it once we stop the recording.